Thanks for coming back to the Small Business Sweet Spot. This interview is with Dewan Chapman, and he's a colleague of mine who does Google Ads. We had a really great conversation around the basics of it, but I wanted to invite you to listen to the end where I share some behind the scenes and talking about if you're watching this podcast, there's a tree and a window, and we were talking about squirrels, and I just thought it was super funny. So if you'd like to hear some behind the scenes, they are in this episode at the end. I hope you enjoy the episode. Cheers. Hello, and welcome to the Small Business Sweet Spot. I'm your host, Barb Davids, and this show is dedicated to helping small business owners like you get more organic website traffic, and also to help create and distribute content and analyzing the numbers so that we can make better informed marketing decisions. It is action-oriented, direct, and conversational. And if you've been looking for SEO or content marketing help, please stick around to the very end where I share about the group coaching program, Small Business Sweet Spot. I'm so glad you're here. Let's go. Hello, and welcome back to the Sweet Spot. I am with Dewan Chapman, and he runs Google Ads, and I'm so happy that he was able to take the time to talk with us today about Google Ads. Thanks for joining me, and thanks for taking the time, Dewan.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and no problem.
All right, so I am going to ask you the most common question that probably anybody asks. I'm assuming. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah,
how much do I have to spend to get any traction on Google Ads?
yeah, 100% the most common question, or the most unanswered question, should I say. I like to reply back to potentials when they ask me this question with how long is a piece of string, because that's honestly how it is. Your budget depends on quite a few different components of Google Ads, depending on how much you want to reach, how many different formats you want to run, how big your website or product or service offering is. So it really just depends on what you're trying to achieve. A good way to answer it is by asking, like, what is your goal? If you understand what your goal is, if your goal is to sell 10 different service offerings, and we know how much those kinds of services kind of cost you from like an end perspective, we can kind of reverse engineer that. As well as if you are a large corporate and you want to run display, video, search, we can do a lot of research to find that out. But the easiest way to determine it is generally to get a ballpark figure of what you want to spend, understand who you want to target, and then run that, getting the data, and then being able to utilize that data to say, okay, we spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. We achieved X, Y, and Z. Was that enough? Was it not? And then from there, we can say, okay, if we wanted to 5X, we're going to need X amount of budget. Otherwise, if that was a good number or a close number, we can then say, okay, let's set the budget now going forward at $3,000, because that's kind of a sweet spot that we're going to work off of. So it's not an exact science. Google Ads isn't an exact science, but you can definitely get a good understanding of what you need to do or a good understanding of what you need to spend to achieve what you want to achieve.
Okay. So you talked about knowing what your goal is. Like that's one of the key factors to knowing how much you
Yeah.
can spend or what you might want to spend. Then what else is there that, like if I wanted to do ads or a small business owner wanted to do ads, besides their goal of what they wanted to get from it, like maybe leads or sales, what else do they absolutely need to know before going into doing Google Ads?
Yeah, so besides knowing what you obviously want to achieve, so being sales, leads, all of those kinds of things, you what you're essentially doing is you're bringing people to your shop front. Your website that you're going to be driving people to is essentially your front of store, your shop. And so people need to understand what am I expecting this person to do? What am I bringing them here to do? What are they going to experience? If you can put yourself in your customer's shoes or your client's shoes, and you're going to bring them to the website, and you look at your website from their perspective, what would you expect the person to do? Are they supposed to read stuff? Is it clear what you're offering to them? So understanding how the person is going to engage with your brand or your business, understanding the journey that they're going to go through, it ultimately leads to whatever the conversion is, being clear and precise. But I would say that if a business owner, especially somebody who hasn't run Google Ads before, wants to get into the space, understanding what the journey looks like, what the customer looks like, and who that customer would be really important to understand. Okay, what am I going to do? How many of these people do I need to get to that end goal? So it's almost like a process. It's got a few steps in it that you'd need to follow. And if you have a clear idea of who is my customer, where should they be coming to my website? What should they be doing on my website? You're probably going to have a very clear understanding of what you can expect out from driving that kind of user behavior through your website.
Okay. That is helpful to know. And I think that's one of the things that I like about your approach is that you don't think about just the front end of Google Ads. You also think about the back end of Google Ads. Can you
Yeah.
talk about how those two tie together?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, once you have the person from a marketing perspective, you understand who you're trying to target, you understand the message you're trying to put out there, you understand how you're going to get driven through your website. It's going to get you to the point where you understand what the outcomes could be. It's going to be a probability game. So it's really important to go from the outskirts of doing a full analysis of this is the persona, this is who I'm trying to target, this is what I'm offering them. Why would they want to use your service? What are the USPs around your service? How are we getting them through the funnel of marketing? How many touch points do they need to have? What should the touch points be? What is that call to action? And again, that call to action stems from knowing your end goal. If you know you want them to give your details to call them from a leads perspective, if you know they want to go in and actually purchase and put their credit card details in, what is your message? What is your clear call to action for them to do that? And then what is the outcome? Once you've got that and you've got the front and end of it, I would also suggest looking at other channels because marketing and Google Ads doesn't just work in isolation. Having that full understanding, you have your full ecosystem of how a person's going to come in, how much you're going to spend, and what you can expect coming out, which is really powerful. And then I always caveat that with A/B testing, and it's something that I really push quite a lot is understanding it's like Google Ads is not just a set and forget kind of thing where you're going to pick your 5 keywords, run it, and then expect the same thing every month. So being able to bring people in and say, okay, well, what happens if we gave them a different journey? What happens if we tested something else and we put some people on this journey and some people on that journey and we actually figured it out? And by doing that, you're also able to mitigate competition to a degree because now you're doing something different. When Google changes its strategy, when there's different formats, you're testing all of these things. So you're constantly stress testing your setup inside your Google Ads and what you're trying to achieve with trying to find the best variations of that. And being able to test something and it doesn't work is fine. It's not a problem. We then now have data to say this ad copy didn't work, this call to action didn't work, this user group didn't work. Let's test something else. And when you do find something better, you can move everything to that and then A/B test that new concept with something different. So you're constantly like reinventing what you're doing and you're trying to find the best user, match them to the right ads to get the right outcome from them eventually.
And how detailed can you get with Google Ads?
You can get very detailed. You can also get very much in your head with the data. So it's very good to have a clear plan of what you're trying to do. Like I always say, if you understand what you're trying to achieve, like your end goal, how many leads you want, and you reverse engineer it, you can have a very clear understanding of what you're looking to achieve. But you can also go very simple. Simple is solid, and that's always a good approach to do as well. That's kind of what I like to do in our start accounts as well. We can do lots of things. We can do video, we can do display, performance max, as I'm sure everyone's heard of. You can do search keywords. We can have all the different match types. You can do 5 ads per ad group. You can like max everything out, but it depends on how much budget you have and what you're trying to achieve. And then second to that, how are you or the marketer or the business owner going to understand that data? If you throw everything at the wall, yes, you'll see what sticks, but are you able to determine why that stuck if you've done so much? So I like to say, let's go simple. Let's understand what we're trying to achieve. Let's get like almost the minimum requirement. Let's say it's 10 keywords. We're not going to do anything from a display or video yet. We just want to see from a search intent perspective, if we put budget behind this, we send them on a good user journey, what do we get? And then we run that. And after, it depends on the size of the audience, but after 2-3 weeks, we look at that data and we say, okay, we're getting some good traction here. We might be getting good leads already, or we might be getting nothing. What do we need to now do from there? Should we be increasing? Should we be getting more budget? You'll have quite a lot of metrics. I mean, Google Ads, if you're not familiar with it, it does have quite an array of different metrics that you're able to utilize, from click-through rates, cost per clicks, the various different bid strategy options that you have. You can look at mobile, desktop, you can segment, you can add audiences. So there's plenty to get out of it. So once you, like, if you have that clear understanding of what you're trying to achieve and you've run a set and you've got that data, you can understand it, you can interpret it and say, from this data, what does it actually mean? What are we doing? Are we driving good traffic? It obviously links to Google Analytics, which has even more analytical data. We can check from there, what is the time on site? Are we sending good quality traffic? What are your measurements for that? Okay, time on site's a good one. Maybe engagement is another good one to see that people are actually going through your site. And obviously, ultimately, a conversion or a lead or whatever your case is would be the ultimate engagement. But we can say we're sending good quality people because these are the metrics we're looking at and they look good. We are also seeing engagement because we're looking at these types of measures. And then from that, we have a conversion rate, or we can see how many actual leads or conversions are happening, and we can determine if we're happy with that or not. Again, that all stems back to the original thing of, if the business paid X amount for that lead, is that sustainable for the business? Ultimately, your ads have to match to that standard. But once we know that $100 per lead is great and we're getting leads at $100, then we're actually in a good space and we're able to test some stuff. We're able to run some other formats. So it can become very simple to 3, 4, 5 keywords in a B2B strategy, drives your entire account, and that's all you really need to do. Or it can be more complicated, especially if it's like an e-commerce brand or something bigger, where there's multiple different parts to the account, multiple different formats, multiple geolocations, multiple parts of the website you're trying to push, and you have various campaigns, and then you just have to really be structured about it and understand it, maybe segment it, label your campaign so you're able to understand the data within inside maybe groups or sections of it to really start making some good decisions off of it. But there's lots of data, there's lots of reporting that you can also utilize with you, like Looker Studio, which is free from Google. It's one of their tools where you can connect and you can visualize the data, which often helps a lot of people interpret data, where you can see it on maybe a longer date range and easier to interpret from a line graph or bar graph or something like that. And so, yeah, by utilizing those different options that you have, and most of those tools are free, it really does help you to take your marketing to the next level, interpret the data, and be able to implement changes from there.
And you mentioned something about 2 to 3 weeks. Is that for to be able to see something with it? Is that for, like, existing accounts, new accounts? Is that just a general thumb? Is it like, how does that work? Like, how do I know when I should make changes or not make changes when I start out?
Yeah, it's a good question. So my general rule of thumb is 2 weeks. If you ask Google, they'll tell you 2 weeks as well because of their algorithm being able to learn and process and actually make changes, provided using one of their bid strategies. But yeah, I would say usually 2 weeks. It does depend from account to account. Some examples could be you're running a small plumbing business and the budgets are quite low. You're only getting 5, 6, 7 clicks a day. You're probably going to want to run something for 2, 3, maybe even 4 weeks to really get data. Like, let's just say you ran it for 3 weeks and you at least got to 150 clicks. When you're actually analyzing it across 5 or 6 keywords, you actually, one keyword could have 50 clicks with another one has 20. If you only ran that for 1 week, you could be looking at data and saying, well, this one had 15 clicks and this one had 12. It's very difficult to make a decision when the numbers are so close if you haven't given enough time. So I generally say if it's a smaller account, maybe a bit longer. If it's a really big account, it could be a week and you could have enough data. But my rule of thumb would be after 2 weeks, that generally gives you enough time to understand, or at least give you preliminary information on, are we on the right track? Do we need to make changes immediately? Or should we wait another week or two because we feel like it's good, but we just don't have enough data? So you'll at least be able to communicate something if you're the marketer to the client, if you're a business owner, to understand the data that's based on your business decisions.
Okay. And that you usually have to send them somewhere on your website. How does what your website looks like or acts like, or that thing that they land on, how does that play a role in the performance of Google Ads?
Yeah, probably one of the most underrated questions, or the least asked from a business owner perspective and a marketing perspective. ultimately your website is like your store, your shop front. If we're talking about a shopping center, you wouldn't send somebody into a store that was dirty, that was falling apart, that was built 20 years ago and never touched since. So why do we do it from a digital perspective? It makes no sense. If you're going to send a user, like I said at the start, if you're going to send a user and you yourself wouldn't go through that user journey, then why would you send your clients through? Why would you pay to send potential clients through there? The landing page that you're sending on the person on is as important as everything else, because if we're talking about search from a Google perspective, we've now got a keyword that's high search intent. So meaning somebody that searches it has the intent to do an action with it. They now see your ad copy, which is wonderfully written, of course, and it drives them to your website. And your website has no information, is very slow, doesn't have any pictures or anything to engage a person. And we're then expecting them to give us all their details, put their banking details in, purchase, send leads. That part really needs a lot of attention. So if you wouldn't purchase, like I said, from the site yourself, your clients aren't going to do it. If you are questioning, I often get this with lead forms, where I'd say to a client, your lead form has 10 fields. Yeah, but we need all that information. Have you ever filled out a 10 field lead form? No, I'd never do that. So
Right.
how would your client not do it? Like, I understand you need the data, but if you wouldn't do it, your client's not going to do it. So understanding that and making it user-friendly, as quick and easy for the person as possible, exactly like if you go into a shop and you want to buy something, pick it off the shelf, you go to the till, you can pay for it and you leave. That your website should be the same. It should be clear. That's what you're trying to do. This is the right button. This is how clear it is. If you're going to put in your credit card details, all the trust signals, this is safe, this is secure. If you're going to be distributing, this is how the distribution or delivery works. If it's just a lead, this is why we're capturing your lead details. We're not going to be sharing it. Like those extra little bits of information. And in this day and age, the security side of things is quite important as well. So sending them on the right page, obviously the page you want them to do the action on, and having that clear and easy to navigate is extremely important. And that often does have quite a big impact. I mean, kind of going off topic, but CRO was invented for this, conversion rate optimization, where if you change where your contact form is and you move it higher up, if you change the color of the buttons, if you change the contrast between text on like light text on a light background where you can hardly read it, chances are people aren't going to read it. So having those kinds of things and just looking at it from that perspective and making it clear, dark writing on a light background, the call to action very clear with a very clear button that says, do X, submit it here. This is what you're going to get out of it kind of thing. That all helps the conversion rate. So it's one thing using Google Ads to send the user to the website. But I want to say, for the most part, probably a controversial point, but Google Ads only gets the people to your website. Like if I'm going to run ads for a business and I'm going to, let's just call it an accounting business, and somebody says, looking for accounting services, and they see the ad and they land on your website, that is kind of the Google Ads job done. Like that's been achieved. Now it's the website to get the person through the rest of the funnel and convert. Obviously, the person doesn't convert, you can always do remarketing, you can get them back to the website. But again, the website has to convert the user. So the targeting, getting the right person to the site is extremely important. But as important as that is getting the person through the funnel to get that conversion. Otherwise, all that money you spent to get the people to your site, if they're not going to convert, you've lost that money essentially, because that person, once they leave your site, is gone.
Okay. That's good to know. So you work with a lot of different clients and a lot of different industries. I'm going to ask you a question and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but is there like, Google always defaults stuff and a lot of tools default things that you don't see.
Yeah.
Is there something that if I'm doing Google Ads or if I'm working with a vendor that I need to just double check that something has been checked or hasn't been checked so that it doesn't unnecessarily spend my budget?
Yeah, so most of Google Ads is like that. There's certain settings that you're going to want to look at, and again, it's generally based on the account you're running. But there are certain things, and I'm going to say kind of along the lines of what Google Ads promotes from their Google reps, is they'll say like run broad keywords. Now,
Mhm.
broad keywords on its own is not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. There's cases where it works well. But running broad keywords, if you don't know what you're doing and you're not going to be checking the account every day to see what it's matching to, can be a bad thing. So again, depends on how confident you are as a person managing it. If you're a business owner trying to manage it yourself, you're probably going to want to go more narrow and try manage it as simple as possible because you're not going to have that time. But yeah, there are definitely things like allowing Google to spend budget based on their predicted spends with inside bid strategies, where they're allowed to kind of go over, and they do that obviously, and that then pushes your budget. If you have a set budget, like that's a no-no for you because it's going to push over. Depending on what industry you're in, you can incorporate, which I often try to suggest, display network on search, which means your search ad gets displayed on the display network, and it generally doesn't look good and it generally doesn't convert well. So that's something you're not going to want to do. Even the search partner network, which is basically Google's got an extended network of search providers that you can show on. If you just run it, if you just allow what Google's kind of set system is, it will generally include that. And if you're not seeing what are the conversions on that, what does the traffic cost me on that? Very often when I look at accounts, especially when I'm auditing them, I look at Google network versus the search partner network. And the search partner network, it's generally cheaper, but it matches to quite a bit. But it generally has zero conversions, meaning none of that traffic that came to your site actually purchased from your site or gave you a lead or any of that kind of stuff. So you can end up negativing those out. And then, yeah, Performance Max again is a controversial one too. Some people love it, some people don't. It works, from my perspective, it works in some industries and it doesn't in others. Google has tweaked it quite a bit over the period that it's been out, because initially it was kind of just stealing brand traffic. Then we're able to split that out and kind of segregate the two. And yeah, again, testing it really helps. But if you're just going to lump everything together, again, you're not going to know what works if something does work, but you also might end up spending quite a bit of money. And in hindsight, you look at it and you're like, well, we didn't get anything out of this. We've spent a lot. And that's generally when business owners approach me for marketing services, when they get to the point where they felt like they're just burning money now. And now they're coming to try to find somebody to say, can you take this over? Because I don't know if I'm doing, or I feel like I'm not doing this right because I'm not getting the results. I feel like I'm burning money. I don't even know if this is the right channel. And you kind of have to peel it back at that stage to understand, okay, what was done, where are we at? So I wouldn't say there's no silver bullet in this, but there are a few of those kind of settings that allow things just to kind of creep, which end up costing you a fair amount. And Google likes their AI, as they always talk about. They like Performance Max, they like bid strategies because that gives them control. The problem is if you don't know how to understand that data, if you don't monitor that daily, it can often spend without kind of getting the results or without you understanding what's happening, which can become a little bit dangerous, especially when the business owner runs it themselves.
Right. So you've been doing this for a while. I'd love to hear like how you got into it, and you can say as much or as little as you want. And then
Yeah,
what do
sure.
you like best about running Google Ads? Like, what do you find interesting? Why are you still in it?
Good question. Yeah, so how I got into it, when I left school, I was originally in South Africa. I left school and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I did enjoy marketing, so I went and got a full-time job at a company that did telemarketing kind of stuff and marketing in general. But I was never in the marketing side of things. I was always in more the business or administrative side. And I kind of worked my way through that company for about 8 years. The first 3 or 4 years, I did a diploma in marketing. It wasn't the greatest course, but it helped me transition from school days being pretty lazy to actually getting something behind me. And obviously working helped too. At that point, I'd finished it, and the director at the time said he wanted me to study a BCom. So the company paid for me to do that. And I did another 3 years of studying and I did a BCom. And at that point, I really wanted to get into marketing, into that marketing department at the company, because yeah, I could see some progression there. And I wanted to move into the marketing field because I wasn't in it at that time. And I'd done a diploma in marketing and I had done a BCom focusing in marketing and marketing management. So at the time, they didn't really have a role for me. So they said, if you wanted to leave, that would be okay. Like they understand what I'm trying to achieve, and they can't provide a role for me. That my job was still secured at that company, but they just couldn't get me into the marketing department. So I had a look around for international companies because I didn't really want to get into a small company and try work my way into like there would be very little growth there as far as whoever owns that company could train me. So I looked for an international company and I moved into Jellyfish, and there was a South African office at the time. And yeah, that was basically becoming a Google Ads executive. I'd never worked in Google Ads at the time. I'd seen a bit of it before from the previous company, but yeah, got in there and pretty much got emerged into all things Google Ads. Pretty scary working on some international clients when you've really had no experience. And this was back in, I think, 2014. So yeah, it was like, I wouldn't say early days of Google Ads, but it was still when things were a little bit different than they are today. And I worked there for about a year or two and kind of got my skills up and found, again, in South Africa, there was quite a niche for people wanting to, or small businesses wanting to run Google Ads. And that wasn't something the agency was focused on. They do some amazing work in the international space on some like incredibly big projects. So that's kind of the focus they had. So my partner in the agency and I stepped out of that company and we started running in South Africa, running Google Ads for companies. And yeah, just really trying to push into the space. Took quite a leap to go from obviously a full-time employment into nothing, building from the ground up. But we were determined and we knew that it was the right step. It was something we both are really passionate about and we wanted to help. I would say what really drives me, understanding that I stepped out there, that was 8 years ago and I'm still in it today, is I really enjoy business growth. So I think it's probably also stemming from the early days in that first company where I had 8 years of like building the company with them. And so Google Ads is a really good tool for business growth. But I think where I want to say my USP in running services for companies is I often try to understand the company beyond just Google Ads. What are they trying to do? What are they building towards? What are the other channels? What are they expecting? What are sales doing? How are sales and marketing communicating? And then taking all of that back into the Google Ads account to say, okay, well, if that's how that's all working, what can we do to plug into that to make that better? And what is everything else doing to plug into the Google Ads to help make it better? And to really understand that really intrigues me and that excites me to want to continue running Google Ads. The industry has changed quite a bit over the 10 years. Obviously, the latest thing is AI and everyone, it's kind of simmered down, but everyone thinking they were losing their job. It's actually, in my opinion, it's made us more valuable because we don't know what AI is doing half the time. So you actually need somebody qualified to run the AI for you and to really make sure you're getting the most out of it. But I like that, yeah, it's cutting edge, it's always changing, there's always something new to learn. And it's a service that almost every business requires. In this day and age where most things are acquired digitally, like we kind of, I always say we passed the stage of old school sales knocking on doors, but we certainly have a lot more options online for that, access to international markets through that kind of stuff, especially if your service or offering is digital. And yeah, so by doing that, we're able to plug in, we're able to look at the business, we're able to unpack it, we're able to actually change the growth trajectory of a company if you do things well. And also it's a service that most business owners don't understand well. And so I also quite enjoy, I want to say, the teaching side of it, where it's not teaching them how to run Google Ads, but it's equipping them with the information they need to make the right decisions and to utilize that channel and whoever else they want to utilize to actually grow their business with it and to not be so scared. Because like I said, a lot of business owners, and it's probably more on the smaller side, have been burned by this because they've tried to run it themselves, or they had somebody run it for them who didn't know what they were doing, promised the world, and then they ended up getting nothing. So very often they're a little bit skeptical, especially when they want to speak to another supplier. But they also, on the other hand, realize that they can't not do it. Because not doing it hurts them more than doing it again. So getting that trust, educating them, explaining how it can work, that kind of stuff really gets me excited about business. And then seeing them, the actual growth, like you can see the numbers coming, you can see the leads coming, you can see the sales growing, you can see budgets growing, because if it works, why would you not invest in it? And then that again obviously opens a conversation on what are the other channels? How can we build this further? And yeah, in the agency we have clients that have been with us for over 6 years. So it means stuff is obviously working and we're continuously trying to grow them. And yeah, that's really exciting to build those kinds of relationships. I'm very much a relationship builder. So I like to really understand the person, gel with the person, make sure there's synergy there. And once there's synergy and alignment, I mean, you really got a good thing going and you can push. You can figure out how the business has not utilized things, how they have components in their business that they just never shared because they never thought it was relevant. And then all of a sudden it helps you move things further even more. And so, yeah, that's really cool. And Google Ads allows me to do that. It's kind of like the conduit into getting into businesses and having those conversations. And yeah, so that's what intrigues me. And that's what makes Google Ads continuously exciting.
Exciting. That's not the word I would use, but all right. Oh, so after all of that, I love the this is how it goes, this is how it is. If somebody listening to this, what is the one takeaway that you hope they walk away with?
First of all, Google Ads is not as scary as it sounds. It's
Okay.
not an empty pitch. You're not just putting money in and it's disappearing. If that's your experience or that's what you've done, it's obviously done to a standard that wouldn't have yielded results, which is why you'd feel that way. So first of all, it's not that scary. It is a good channel. It does drive leads. I've seen it multiple times over. So that would be my first one. And the second one is don't be afraid to continuously test. Like try different ad copies, try different call to actions, do something different. Try it. If everyone's doing X, do Y. If Google's telling you to run broad keywords because that's the only thing that's going to move your account, maybe test it on a small conservative budget, test it, see if it works. If it doesn't work, pause it, move on. But don't be scared to now A/B test because you don't know if you're going to break something. Let's test it. And then the third one, which we've hardly touched on, but it's also incredibly important, is please make sure you track everything. Very often, I go again from those audits, you'll go into accounts where people have been running it for 4 years, and you're like, how have you been tracking conversions? Or we haven't. But how are you making data-driven decisions?
Right.
I can already say you're not because you don't have the data. So it's very important to make sure that even before you start running ads, that you have the tracking set up. Even if it's so basic standard, like you don't have to go wild, it doesn't have to be tracking every last thing. But the more data points you have, the better your decision making is going to be because you'll understand what's come through. But if you run accounts without tracking, or there's 3 buttons on a page and you tracked one, if people are clicking on the other 2, you would never know. So it's really important to make sure that that tracking's set up properly. And again, it helps you with reporting. If you have the tracking, if everything's set up, you're able to create reports that are going to inform your decisions. It's going to update the company as a whole on what's happening, and it's going to explain how you're investing and what you're getting out of it. So yeah, those would be the 3 most important.
Okay. And for people who want to get into Google Ads or want to talk with you more about anything today, how can they best find you?
LinkedIn is the easiest. I'm very responsive on there. If they do want to get into Google Ads, the easiest way is to just get into it. You can create an account right now. It'll take 5 minutes to create an account, put a test budget in and test it out. Offer a business for free to run it on a really small budget. And yeah, you're going to learn, you're going to thrive in it. You're going to watch YouTube videos. You're going to understand it properly. You're going to help them move their business forward. Like, the experience in Google Ads is the most important. I think what really benefited me is when we started doing things on our own, when I created the agency, we did so many different tests, so many different budgets, so many different clients across so many different industries that you start to get a whole new perspective on it because you're seeing how diverse people think in different industries. B2B versus B2C, completely different. E-commerce versus lead gen, completely different. The words you use, the way that you're trying to articulate what they're going to do on the page are completely different. So if somebody's trying to get into it, the best way to do it is actually just by running accounts. If you are able to obviously get an internship or a job with a company that exposes you to all these different accounts, it's going to exponentially increase your growth by 7-fold because you're going to get experience in that. You're going to see how accounts work. And yeah, it's always very exciting to hear when seniors or people who have been in the industry for a long time are able to take someone on and give them that information, because like I can make decisions really quickly looking at data because I've seen it so many times, and being able to impart that to somebody who wants to get into the industry who wouldn't have thought that way because they haven't seen this data before, that's obviously really, really powerful. So to find somebody who could be your mentor or something like that would be really good, and to help them grow you as you progress in this digital marketing career.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for shedding some light on that and giving us your perspective. So thanks for your time today, Duane. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for having me on the channel.
All right. Thanks. And that wraps up this episode with Duane and the reality of Google Ads to help your business thrive online. We'll see you in the next sweet spot. Cheers. Thank you for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're looking for SEO and content marketing help, you can find all kinds of information at compassdigitalstrategies.com. And if you like the episode, please tell a friend. Cheers. And if we see a squirrel, we can talk about it. It's okay.
I love this. Cool. I hope to see a squirrel because I've never seen one in a tree.
Well, yeah, right. So I hope that we do, because I have never seen one on camera while I'm on. I think it was on an interview with a client potentially once. It wasn't like an actual podcast. So I was like, dang it, that would have been fun.
Do they come on your windowsill?
Yeah, no. Well, they're like rolling up and down that tree branch right there.
Okay.
So that you can kind of sometimes see them rolling through here, going to there, and it's really kind of fun. Sometimes they'll stop. I got mooned by a squirrel once. I shit you not.
I hope for that in this one.
I hope not. Yeah, I'll send you the video. It's really funny.
Yes, that's epic.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope the Google Ads discussion is as fun as a squirrel mooning me, but
I definitely don't think so.